we're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody coming out today. Beautiful cold day in Austin. Alright, so this is our 11th official club meeting. Some of the announcements we're going to go over today, as well as our, we have two guest speakers today, Curtis Casciano and Todd. And they're going to be kind of speaking on a whole spectrum of Apistogramma, the subspecies. We also have a species profile, and then we'll do our attendance raffle at the end. So looks like we got a pretty good table of goodies. Alright, just so some of the announcements. So the banner contest for December, congratulations Megan Adams. You guys seen that picture already on the Facebook group? It's a really awesome picture. What is that, pearl Barami?
Yes.
Awesome, that is gorgeous. So the next meeting, so in February will be that second Saturday, will be Cassandra Dominique, and she'll be on high-tech plants. So that's a one that's been kind of requested, and we're kind of working towards that, so I'm happy for that. And then the following will be March, and that'll be Rob Ziegler, still the same second Saturday, and it'll be an exotic species discussion, so I can't wait for that as well. As far as some activities that kind of we've been working on since the December meeting, we're trying to get a merch, so we're trying to do a hat drop, so with the ETAA logo on it. So if you guys have any ideas or vendors or anything like that does hats, I don't know if we're doing like kind of the printed or the embroidered or whatever options we have, we just need to look at. So if you guys know of anybody that does that, please holler at myself or one of the board members. That's kind of our next focus for some type of merch. As far as the April fish swap, saying just around the corner, but a lot of planning and a lot of scheduling for tables. So if there's anybody interested in booking a table, get with me. We still haven't 100% guaranteed the day yet, but as soon as we get that through the Fountain City Lions Club and we pay for that Saturday, we'll go ahead and kind of release that information, as well as you guys are interested and you want to set up a table closer to time, we'll kind of announce like who's setting up tables and stuff as well. And then as far as the open chat, I think it's continued. I mean, people are just using it like daily lives. You know, myself, I'm always on there looking to see what people are saying. A lot of good information coming from the group and sharing. There's a guy that reached out there, and a couple people, like, you know, reached out as far as helping with a 125-gallon aquarium just to move it because he needed support with that. So I feel like the club is doing what we were set out to do as far as, you know, basically education and helping one another and kind of building that local community. As far as in progress, so we are also looking to start a web page, so like you know, just .com type of thing or .fish or whatever's available out there. So if any of you guys have any experience starting a web page, we have a couple people that might have experience that I know of. I got a friend that kind of does that stuff. He's a programmer. But if you guys have ever done anything like that, I'm more than welcome to get y'all's experience and buy-in, and maybe you guys can help support it, even potentially run it. Would like someone with some experience to do something like that, who's already in the club. So please reach out to myself or one of the board members for that. And then we're also looking to add a breeder's profile. So we kind of talked about this in our last board meeting that we had 2 weeks ago. I think this kind of like, it'll be kind of like the species profile, but maybe like the breeders in our club. So this kind of gets you out there, you know, what you're interested in, what you have in your tanks, and what you're looking to, and then it kind of helps network each other. So I feel like you guys already do a good networking as far as, you know, who's got what and if what's available and stuff like that in the club. But this kind of like shed a spotlight to that. So basically this is kind of up for discussion still, so I think it's going to be something continued, but the more interest we have for it, and some of this was sparked from the open chat, but the more interest we have in it and you guys reach out, then we can kind of build that breeder's profile, and then each meeting we can maybe do one breeder in our club and what they have and how to contact and get that information. So any interest, please let us know. And we'll keep kind of rolling these out too in the meetings and bringing it up to see until we get several people interested. Okay, I don't have a page for you, but this will be after your talk, so.
Let me, I really wasn't, I haven't plugged in yet, so what do I gotta do here? Give me a second.
Slacker.
Yeah. Glad to see everybody's here. There's a lot of us here. This is a good showing. Really nice table. Amy, you need to go a little light on the food. Those Danios are about to explode.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't want to do it.
No, I was going to do it so I have what's up there. How do I do that? This,
Yeah, pull it up first and then plug it in.
okay. What is set in my device? It's from mine.
All right, while he's doing that, we'll go ahead and cover the species spotlight.
Yeah, there you go.
So today we decided to do and kind of see stuff that regularly comes on the table. We try and have like a sample of the species spotlight. That might not always be possible. If there's any type of interest as far as what you guys want to get experience-wise, we can talk at. We can reach out and see who's got the most experience with this type of either plant or fish. But we're doing Java moss today. The scientific name is Texphilium barberry, hopefully that's right. But it is a, I don't know who out of hands like has had Java moss before. Very, very
Probably
common.
everybody.
So maybe just shout out if there's like something I don't say. Just like a general, if you haven't had it, we'll go over some of the basics. It is a South Asian style plant. It's where it originally comes from. It's probably one of the easiest plants in the aquarium other than duckweed, but it doesn't grow as fast as duckweed. A lot of things I looked up when I was just grabbing these pictures, it says slow growing, but for some reason mine just kind of grows crazy, so I don't know if that's always the case. I stick it in all of my little 20 gallons where I have just like a hang on the back, or not hang on the back, sponge filter, and it just kind of does that extra absorption of nitrates and stuff. I've seen a lot of like really cool how people utilize it. I mean, mine's just like a ball floating in the corner or something like that, and fish breeding and all that kind of stuff's perfect for it. You know, you kind of protects the really small, tiny fish and everything. But a lot of people use it for aquascaping and like gluing it to like little stumps and trees and stuff to make it look like really, you know, cool and stuff under the water, as well as you can mat it. So like if you grow it on like those little plastics, or even like the egg crate style, and just kind of glue it a layer on there in pieces. It can really like dense up thick, and then you kind of can spread it and actually be like a bottom at the end of the aquarium with your substrate. So as far as what have y'all done with it? You guys kind of shout out as far as
Can't get rid of it.
can't get rid of it.
Growing out driftwood and rocks.
It does fill up aquarium really quick, and you got to pull so much out of it. And hopefully someone else wants it, or you just throw it away. Or,
I grow mine on the back wall, and my emperor tetra is actually spawning it quite a bit. Every 3 or 4 days they're spawning in it, and all the barbs know that, so they just go and pick the eggs out of it. It's all over the back wall, because it actually grows like, if it can't attach to your aquarium,
yeah.
like it has like it'll attach to the algae, and it'll actually grow on the algae.
So I like to kind of bunch it and wrap it around the sponge filter, and then it just kind of blooms on the top and just kind of comes out, and then you just kind of pull some chunk off, and then it just kind of keeps growing on it. But being able to be like locked on the sponge filter, it does make it to where it's not floating around, especially when the water changes. It always just stays in that one area. So, anybody else experience?
Big chunks of it can let you breed the dwarf shrimp in community aquariums and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because it gives them a big shrimp city to go hide in.
Yeah.
And the babies seem to survive in there.
I just recently set up a little 20 gallon for my first shrimp take. I've never really kept shrimp before. Some of those blue dreams that I think I got them at the December show. And it's done perfect. They live all in it, and they come out. I throw like little fish pellets and stuff, and they just come out and just go crazy.
They really like that moss.
Yeah, they do.
I'll throw a couple of fist-sized wads of it into a patio tub and throw pygmy sunfish out there.
Yeah.
And at the end of summer, I just have dozens and dozens of pygmy sunfish.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
I live and spawn all in it.
I've noticed, I don't think I've ever had hair algae when I have that in there. I think it really does a good job of controlling nitrates and stuff. So
It competes against it directly. I use it for my celestial pearl danios. I do what you do, a big clump, set it in a corner,
yeah.
and you can let the parents go over it for like a week and then pull them out, and you'll have babies all in there from celestial pearls, because they you have to feed them for another 2 weeks probably.
Yeah.
Because they just eat all the stuff like that.
I've also had it outdoors in the wintertime, and it can ice over and do fine.
Really?
It is very temperature tolerant.
Yeah, I can't really kill it, so. I did bring a big clump here, so if anybody's never had it before and interested, feel free.
We have several kinds of moss on the table, it seems this time. I brought spike moss too.
That's all.
So, right,
It's HDMI.
what's that?
HDMI.
I can't really see the word HDMI, but I'm sure it is. Yeah, there it is. This damn light blinds me. There we go. All right. I'll probably have to push something on this donuts.
You kind of algae.
What's that? That's some kind of weird algae.
Radioactive.
It's disco out.
That's what I just did. It just reduced it.
It's probably your settings.
Maybe start. No, I'll tell you what I'll do.
Go to your display settings and do like duplicate page.
I don't know how to do that. I'm a tree doctor, all right? I don't deal with computers very much.
Yeah, they're about to start.
I did put together a slideshow, though. It's real nice. Y'all may or may not see it.
What are you saying?
Yeah, I don't either. Last time I just plugged it in, it just popped right there.
Should be able to search the slide.
PowerPoint files?
Sounds like you're ready to build a web page.
Yeah, like I need
You don't want me on your.
Well, while he's fiddling with that, I'll start with this. So, today we're gonna go over apistogrammas. And more or less, I'm just gonna go over the general terms of them, and the conditions of them in the wild, their behavior, some of their tank setups, some of the water conditions, some of their tank mates, their diet, and then also Tyler's gonna discuss breeding, and then we're gonna also do the species within, or I should say, the individuals within the groups. And I tried to pick out the top 10 most common. They're very much the same, so versus repeating myself over and over again, I tried to pick out one or two things for each one of them and just kind of go over that as a whole. So first are some general facts about apistogrammas. There's one. So they are exclusively found in South America. Thank you. So I guess you just push them? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so they're exclusively found in South America and found within the Amazon River Basin. They are micro-predators in the wild, and in general, they're considered a very young species. Just 25 years ago, they only had 40 species described, and I think it was 70 waiting to be in the backlog. As of now, there's only 70 species described, and there's up to 400 in the backlog to be described. So this is a fish that you get into it, and you can go really deep into it. I mean, there's some. When I did my research for this, I mean, there's some rabbit holes you can go into. It's like it's really, really deep. So one of the things about them is, for the most part, they're all very similar. They all are considered cave brooders. If you look at some of the papers just 10 years ago, a lot of the papers say they not only are cave brooders, but they're substrate spawners. But you need to provide a cave for them. So what they tend to do is spawn in the cave, and then they put their eggs or fry into the substrate right afterwards. So that they're all consistently cave brooders. Another thing that's really cool about, and I say all, but there's an exception for the most part. But for what I've read, all of them have, the females are the only ones who take care of the fry. The males strictly protect the territory, and the female happens to be within that territory. So the female protects her babies, he happens to protect the area around him. So then as a result, he can have 2 and 3 females within his territory. So he'll draw a big giant circle, and the females will draw smaller circles that kind of go around. And as a result, some, depending on the species, some can have up to 5 females. And in the wild, it's just, there's a picture that I have that shows like there's way too many in one spot. But in tanks, for the most part, you can keep 2 to 3 females per male in some species. And then there's others within them that there's some females that just will not have it. Like I bred my Borelli once, and I had 3 females in there, and 1 female took all the babies. She decided, those are all mine, even if they were a day old, a week old, hers were 2 weeks old, and she took all of them out, and she decided she was going to kill at least one of the other females. So, you know how that works sometimes. Not everybody's nice. This allows the males to exhibit what they, polygamy, and so they can, spread their seed a little bit more and have their way. So, all right. So, in general, there are conditions in the wild. Let's see if I did that. Right. Yeah. So this is the picture that I was saying about how many are. So when you first look at this picture, you're thinking, oh, there's a couple. 1, 2, 3. I think I counted 17 because they're all tucked away. But this is this right here, you see how big the leaves are? They're only like this big. So conditions in the wild are leaf litter on the bottom and sandy substrate. So they all come from very slow moving waters that are typically only 6 inches deep. Some of them come from smaller pools than that, some of them come from obviously a little bit larger. But for the most part, they come from slow moving waters that are rich in tannins, black water situations, sandy substrate, and just leaf litter everywhere. They are all considered micro predators, so they just feed on mosquito larvae to daphnia, anything that creepy crawls, anything in the ground, worms, anything like that. That's what they're looking for. So when you try to duplicate that at home, you have to understand they're meat eaters. They do like algae, but that's just kind of all right, I'll eat this algae as I go for some of the prey that's within it, and they do get quite a bit of algae like that, but they are meat eaters as a whole. In the wild, their conditions are, the waters are very soft but acidic due to the high amount of organic material that's in the waters. So all these leaves being broken down will make your water extremely acidic, but it'll be soft. So not exactly East Tennessee waters. And then once again, they're all considered black water because of, in the Amazon, everything is, the leaves are on the ground and all over. So next we'll go into the behavior. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I did take that up. I know. We'll just look at this nice tank while we will. The behavior of them, I kind of went over a little bit. They're very territorial as a fish as a whole, and they protect small areas. Like you saw in that one picture, some females only have a 6-inch area that they protect, but they protect it. Now in your tank, it's much bigger than that because your water column is higher, and they base it on, it's supposed to be squares in a small square, but if you give them a 55 that's tall, they've got to feel like they've got to defend the entire thing, so it spreads it out. So if you take an area that's this big, that's 4 inches high, that's all they would feel. But if you stretch it out to 16 inches high, they have to stretch it 16 inches wide too. That's how their kind of mind works. They can't just protect this by this. They know that if it goes up and out, they protect the entire width of that. So if your water column is really high, you know that you're going to have, you can actually have a few lesser fish because of that, because they spread themselves out a little bit. Let's see. Males are typically larger. Actually, of all the ones that I looked at, they're all larger except for there was one that was kind of smaller. And they live between 5 and 10 years, which is quite long. I wish I could get mine to live that long. I haven't seen them have issues after a while. They're more aggressive during spawning. As we all know, for cichlids, they all just get aggressive during spawning, and they want to protect their babies. Both the males and the females, and when we go through some of these pictures, are extremely vibrant. But then when they get into spawning colors, the females sometimes just outdo the males. I mean, 'cause I really like the yellows of the females, and they're really, really yellow. I mean, you can tell when the female is in the mood and the male is not, because you'll sometimes have a male who's just kind of, I mean, they're really pretty, but they're not vibrant. And when they are vibrant, I mean, they turn it on. I mean, it's just like the last picture before. I think this is an Agassiz. That's in spawn color. I mean, that's just vibrant as it gets. And they can dull themselves down, but when they're spawning, man, they are lights out. Okay. when you want to achieve spawning, a lot of people just say, "Yep, I'm gonna go buy male and female." It doesn't, this is one of the species that it doesn't work out that well. I just asked Tyler the other day about a pair that I got from him. Was this female compatible with this male before, or was she more compatible with the other one? So the way that they describe the best way to achieve a spawning pair is to get like a 40 breeder and put like 6 or 8 fish in there and let them pick their mate. Because some females want a male who can really defend the territory, and other want someone who's willing to, you know, defend the fry a little bit more. They have personalities. They are truly a very highly personable fish, and they like one another's personalities. So they should be picking out the mate. So oftentimes you'll buy a pair, and you can go the life of that pair, and they never spawn. And it's just because, you know, you throw me in the house with some other person, that doesn't mean I'm going to be willing to raise children with her, you know. So that's the way it is with the pistos as well. So, and as in life, the female gets to make the final say. She's the one who picks, not the male. You know how males are. Okay, so another thing is ditherfish are very useful when it comes to Apistos, and this is one for picking out mates, and also it makes the female and the male more territorial and protect their fry. So they use them not to just beat them up, it's just because they always think there's other fish around and they're willing to protect their fry more, and it makes them better parents. They're pretty darn good parents as it is, but they make better parents when you have ditherfish, and depending on how your breeding setup is, you probably should remove the ditherfish afterwards unless you want to lose a few fry. Okay, so now I go to tank setup. You're trying to mimic the wild, so that's hanging plants. This really isn't, I mean, you can't really see their substrate very well. This picture is more to, I mean, I don't even see any Apistos in it, but this was on an Apisto page. But it's just to show you that the more dense cover that you can give them, the better. I tend to like to have my setups be a little bit more natural than this, with leaf litter all over the bottom, because it gives them the fry something to feed on, all the microorganisms, and it increases your bioload like crazy. I mean, dead rotting plants, you know, gives you lots of, it softens your water, and it actually increases your bioload on these, or the biologicals in your tank. It's just like gravel in your tanks. It's just like gravel in your, or any ceramics you put in there. It does the same exact thing for you.
Releases CO2 naturally as well.
Right, and it's actually by lowering the ammonia, or softening the water, it makes the ammonia unavailable. So your plants grow faster. It's pretty wild. I didn't think, I have, one of my tanks is, I thought, oh, it's low light, and all of a sudden there was like 2 or 3 plants that just took off after I started throwing in a bunch of beech and oak leaves. So it's pretty wild how it makes the ammonia unavailable, or not, it can't kill your fish more or less. This one of the things I said was about the depth of the water. Your tank should contain driftwood, leaf litter, a cave, and live plants. A cave is actually essential when it comes to them because of a couple factors. Females like to just go into the caves for just a little bit of peace and quiet, just to not hear, you know, the roar of a tank or whatever it is. They go in their caves. Even with a tank that doesn't have any males in it, the females will go into that cave and make it their own, and they create their own territories. It gives them something to have. So you should you have to have a cave, especially if you're going to spawn them. You have to have plenty of places for them to hide. I think this is moss right here that this is the Java moss. So you can have plenty of places for them to hide, because they like to get away from, they think they got to get away from everything really, but they constantly are hiding. Like with leaves on the ground, they will go under those leaves and just kind of hang out underneath them. They're pretty wild how they just kind of act naturally. So the leaf litter serves many purposes. It adds tannins, provides plenty of places to hide, like I said, microorganisms galore, and if you plan on raising fry, it'll acidify and soften your water. So one of the things about not only just Apistogrammas, but dwarf cichlids in general, your water has to be soft in order for the sperm to be viable. because if your calcium levels are too high and it's too hard, it actually hardens the shell on the egg prior to the sperm penetrating, and it makes it so that you cannot fertilize your eggs. So it has to be soft, but oftentimes you can let your water, once they're fertilized and once that fry hatch, it's okay to increase your hardness of your water, because it actually helps calcify and get your babies growing a little faster. So this is a little thing that when I was reading about it, I was like, wow, that's a good way to think of getting your babies up to run. The soft water does not really help them grow as fast. Sandy bottoms are a must, because they do sift. They sift through they don't make a mess, which is cool, because most cichlids make a stinking mess of sand. These guys don't really do that. And they actually do pretty well with plants. Don't pick on plants and eat them and stuff like that. You should make sure you do not use aggregate sands, because they contain too much calcium and will affect the pH. So when you pick out your sand, you just have to make sure it's not an aggregate sand. Like everybody else says, oh, use pool sand. I think that's an aggregate sand. I don't think you're supposed to use that. That's pretty much it on that part. All right, so now we'll go into, there's a nice little cave. I use cutout coconuts a lot of the times. My kids eat this ice cream that comes in a coconut. It's half coconut already. You just take it and shave the top off. It's pretty cool. You can get it at Costco. You get a big old box. You keep the kids happy and keep the pistos happy. My wife's like, why do you keep on buying this? No one eats it. I'm like, they like it, trust me. They like it. The ice cream. They love this. Okay, so water conditions are very species specific. The pH range can be from 4 to 8. So, I mean, that's just everywhere. So what I say about water conditions is know the individual that you have, the type that you have, and wild caught fish are more towards the lower pH, and then as they become more and more captive bred, you can kind of acclimate them to our natural waters. Water hardness is a pretty big deal. Once again, species specific, and they say they 0 to 270 DH. I tested my water straight out of the tap in Knoxville for like 3 months, and my DH was 700 and something. So that's why I figured out one of my I have another type of smiling cichlid that I couldn't get them to successfully spawn because my DH was way too high. Temperature range 72 to 86. I tend to keep mine on the 76 side. If you want to get them to spawn, you can raise it just like with other fish, and then if they don't spawn, I know it sounds crazy, drop the temperature on them, make them think it's cold, kind of like you do with cories. Give them a nice little cold water splash, and then throw the water temperature up and soften the water. If you can't get them to spawn, RO or rainwater is the way to do it. Caution with rainwater is acid rain. If you live in the city, you should not, if it didn't rain for a month in August, and it rains and you collect rainwater, I wouldn't use that first batch. I'd let it flow through first, get some of that acidity, natural bad acidity down. Let that get down a little bit, and then you can start utilizing it.
You supplement it, use
for like minerals and stuff like that? Yes, I do. Because I have like a lot of snails and shrimp in my tanks and stuff like that, I use half tap myself, half RO or half rainwater, and that's one way to supplement. And then because I fertilize my plants periodically, that'll supplement it as well. But most of the time I don't really have to overly do it, because your tap waters are filled with what you typically need. The combination that does work pretty well is half tap, half RO, and then or half rainwater. If you want to add tannins to your water around here, the best leaves to use, in my opinion, are beech and oak leaves. You should try to get them before they hit the ground, because companies like mine who spray pesticides, you can hit the leaves. You don't want to put anything in it. So you want to make sure that the tree hasn't been sprayed with pesticides. And oaks and beeches really don't have many problems that you spray with pesticides, so they're a safer group. Whereas maples, more people have them, and as a result, more people treat them.
I use maples, but I don't spray it. They're in my yard, and I know there's nothing sprayed on them. I also use magnolias.
Yeah.
Magnolia leaves work really good.
Magnolia leaves work. The one thing we have to use caution with magnolias is there is a phytotoxicity to magnolias that will cause some of your other plants to stop growing as fast. That's the only negative. Tree story, that will tell you that magnolias are absolutely the nastiest plant there is. I mean, crazy. They can take the pH of the soils. If you plant a nice pretty azalea underneath it, and the pH is 7.2 on Monday, you come on Thursday and they can drop the pH down to 1. A week later they can make it 11 because they know how to kill. So they'll leach and they'll pull acid and they'll leach. They are murderous plants. I mean, so you have to use that caution when you use magnolias in your tanks because they can leach to prevent that's like never use walnuts or anything like that because they all have phytotoxicity to other plants that will prevent them from growing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I use the black walnuts.
Yeah, they can make it so that nothing can flower underneath or fruit under a black walnut. Did anybody know that? I tried to grow a tomato plant to prove it wrong. I grew a 12-foot high tomato plant with not one blossom on it because it's a black walnut. It won't. It's a lilipathy. A lot of people use almond leaves as well. You have to purchase those online or try to do what I did last month and go to Costa Rica and pick up almond leaves, but did you know that customs doesn't allow that? I figured out a way to get it past them, but I had to put it in all the magazine leaves. I was like, oh man, I can only get like 10 in there. I was like, darn it. Next time. But the almond leaves work really well and they make them kind of yellow. Let's see. So another thing on water condition, which is different than what most of us have always learned about, is you should not do large water changes on them because they just don't like anything. I never do more than 10% myself. And I have raised, I've had fry in my one tank for, I think they're going on 3 months, and I have not changed the water once. I put fresh water in, but I have not changed it out once. I keep checking it and keep checking it, and all my parameters are in check. I don't feed it very heavily because they don't eat very much, so they're not like a lot of other fish where they just eat massive amounts and excrete a lot. They just don't do that. So you feed them lightly, so you don't change the water nearly as frequently. So like I've had one of my setups almost like 7 months. I think I've changed the water twice, like pulled out 10% twice. You just don't have to do that a whole lot. But that's because you keep live plants in there and leaves and everything like that. And like I said, they just don't use the bathroom a whole lot. And unless you overfeed like crazy, then you're not going to have to. But check your water parameters and stuff like that. But let's see. One of the things that changes that is ditherfish. So as soon as you start saying, hey, I'm going to have an Apisto tank that's going to have celestial pearl danios or neon tetras or whatever you're putting in there, that's going to change it. You're going to start changing your water pretty frequently. So getting to that, we'll go into some tank mates. So there's a picture of almond leaves. Those look terrible compared to what you can pick up on the leaf litter in Costa Rica. I'm telling you, I was like, man, these are beautiful compared to these nuts. So tank mates, you should go for small fishes that have small mouths, that aren't bullies, that allow food to fall, and they don't pick everything off in the process. So I don't know how many fish there are that like that, but very few. So you just have to go peaceful. And then also, you have to pick fish that are willing to not eat all your fry and can handle every once in a while a little whooping from an angry mother. Because every once in a while she will, I have a celestial pearl danios in my one I said, and every once in a while they'll just take it out on them. Like, today's the day, I'm going to chase all the CPDs around. And they take it for the day and go hide. So you have to pick peaceful fish. So some of them that I've found are the ember tetras. These are the laughing cichlids. So there's quite a few of those. There's Dersagira, Curviceps, I think Argonian, whatever it is. But there's a few are in the classified as the laughing cichlids. Cory cats are good. The only negative to cory cats are when you have fry in substrate and cory cats with knuckleheads, and then female can ram, but they're like, I smell food, so they might eat your fry. So use caution when you're using koi cats in there. Pencil fish, because they have those little teeny mouths that go up, and they're good fish. Rasboras, even the brilliant rasbora, apparently it's not so brilliant. Like I said, CPDs work great. Ember tetras work really good. Bristlenose tetras, or bristlenose plecos. Bolivian rams. Anybody else use? Anybody have any pistos that use anything else dither-wise? Yeah.
I've got mine with rainbow cichlids, rams, cory cats, and swords.
Yeah, I mean, so as long as they don't pick on them, or I mean, and yours is a community tank, so they're used to it. You know, it takes a little bit of time. The key is to let something fall to them and feed them. I think that's about it. Oh, I use endlers as well. But the negative to endlers are, man, those dudes can eat up so much and so fast. I mean, they are just the greediest little boogers. I mean, they are greedy. So now we get to the diet of them. So being in the wild, they love live foods. I mean, if you can get them on, you don't want to keep them on live foods, but if you get fish from the wild, you're going to probably have to start them on live foods. So you've got Daphnia, of course, mosquito larvae, moinia, blackworms. I use blackworms quite a bit because I love watching them eat those dudes. I like watching one grab one and it drag it around the tank. The blackworm drag the fish around the tank. It's pretty funny. And any other of your microculture banana worms, all those worms. The objective is to get them onto a prepared food though, because if you don't, then you're not going to have food unless you're just unless you're like Cassandra, you just grow food constantly. So they do take frozen foods, baby brine, Daphnia, bloodworms as well. But there is a caution when it comes to using blackworms bloodworms because they have a sheath around them. So depending on how small your little apisto is, if that sheath gets stuck in their mouth and they can't get it out, they're going to go around and they die. They die pretty quickly, actually. So the sheath gets stuck in their mouth. So when I feed mine, I take it and just chop it up really fine, and it makes a bloody mess of the thing. But that's the only way I feel comfortable feeding it, because I have killed one, unfortunately, with a bloodworm. I had one get stuck in it, and I couldn't get to it quick enough, more or less. So let's see. So that's that. Next is the other prepared foods. You want, if you're going to use a pellet, you want something that's slow and that sinks slowly, because they do feed on the bottom. I use insect bites because that's my go-to right there, bug bites, because they love insect larvae anyhow. And then of course the Nano Extreme is a great food as well. It's just, it is really, really small. So if you can bump them up a little bit, because otherwise you got to put a ton of those in there. That's a really small food. Let's see, flakes. Most of them don't take flakes. However, the fish that I got from Todd, man, that dude is a flake. He won't do anything but flakes. I'm just like, dude, you're the wrong. He's in my community tank all by himself. He's a flake fool. He's hilarious. I mean, I've never had a fish that went from being like, I read everything about him. I was so ready for the species, and this dude didn't follow any of the rules. I mean, as soon as I come to feed, he's like, yes, I'm first. I'm like, you're supposed to be last on the check. But, some fish have their own personalities like that, and they're willing to break the rules. And depending on how long your fish has been considered not wild, you're gonna have to probably train them. So Rob and I were talking about training your fish to feed from live to pellets or anything else. There's ways to get them to train. Start the live and sprinkle it in. The whole time, it's just kind of like training kids. You just gotta think, hey, you're going to get this every time, and then you sprinkle it in, and the bug bites over the Nano until they realize, hey, I just grabbed a piece of something else. I was expecting a blackworm, but instead I got, oh, I actually like that. So you just got to keep training them. You're going to have to, but wild fish, you're going to have to really train them to eat pellet or prepared foods. I had a group, the first group of Borelli that I bought, I got 8 males and 8 females, and I could not get 2 or 3 of them to ever convert over to anything other than live food, and I ended up losing them. All right, so the other thing is are algae wafers. They do eat algae in the wild, so if you don't have any algae in your tank, you're probably gonna have to supplement them with something. Algae wafers is good if you have a dither fish. They won't go to it unless you have something else just hitting it, and they'll just eat it. The other thing is you can use cucumbers, just like you're feeding your geckos and stuff like that. Anybody who loves shrimp, you might want to close your ears for this statement. Another thing that I do for mine is I put shrimp in my tanks so that they can hunt their babies. It's the best thing. I mean, you can keep the shrimp alive. They're super easy. They breed like crazy, and you can just give your fish something entertaining to feed on and watch them. It's pretty fun to watch them chase the baby fry around. I mean, those little shrimp are like diving for their lives, but the fish just, it's great fun for me. I'm like, oh, get him, point to him, it's over here, it's over here, it's over here. So nothing like spending $10 on a shrimp and then watching it get killed by, but they don't eat the adults, they only eat the babies. So you can keep them for quite a long time. Let's see, and then by providing ample cover for the shrimp to hide, you're successfully going to have stuff for your fry and stuff like that. So, and on that note, now we're on to the breeding aspect of it, and I'm going to bring in Tyler, who is much more experienced at this, and I'm going to let him hook up his computer and give it a whirl. This is Tyler Todd. He's quite experienced when it comes to this, and after he's done, I'm going to go over some of my different species as well, so we're not done here. We're close. Man, there's a lot of info on that fish. Yeah.
You know how like African cichlids, they do like all males?
Right, so it doesn't look this.
Possible?
I don't know.
Kill each other?
I think they would probably kill. Yeah, you got to take that cord out.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they would probably kill another, just like all male Africans probably would eventually. I don't know if they would. I don't know. Tyler, what do you think about that? Would you keep all male Apistos in the tank?
I have done it when they're growing out, but once they get bigger now, they'll kill each other.
Like betas.
Yeah. Kind of like most things.
Alright. I want to thank my wife for putting this together because I definitely did not have time. So, let's start. So, when they're young, they're very hard to tell apart until they're about 1/2 inch, 3/4. So then I'll show you some pictures of them and you can kind of get an idea. And then allowing them to mature is going to make them a lot easier until they're that time. I'll show you. So your males, your mature males, they're going to have more pronounced fins. The top fins, what you're going to look for if you're ever going to try to sex them, is the dorsal fins. The 2 first ones are going to be longer than the rest, as your females won't have that. And then they're going to, all your other fins are going to be orange, black. I've seen some that are red. Really depends on what species or who bred them, what do they have. And then the males are going to be about 4 times larger than your females when they're fully grown. So that's that. And then your females, they're going to be less vibrant in color. They're going to be, most of the time when you get them, they're going to be like a dull yellow. And then they're going to be smaller than the male. Your females, when full grown, probably will get about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches. It'll be there. And then when they're ready to spawn, they're going to get bright yellow. I'll show a picture of that too. And then the fins are going to be shorter. And then if you look at the top of them, you'll see that the top fins really aren't as big as a male would be. So that's one way to look when you're trying to sex them at a younger age. And the other thing is that I look, is kind of where your fin's going to be at. There's going to be some black lines. Males will have it too, but the females are going to have it the most when they're younger. That's how you can sex them apart, where the males are going to have more color on the fins. Some females will have some of the orange on their fins, so you have to be worried about that. You also, when you're growing them out, I'll show that later, but you can see kind of, that's a female that's already bred, so she's kind of duller, and then that's one of mine that's was ready to breed, and that's her down there too. And then, so kind of like the things you're going to need, necessities. You're going to need caves. I always use the aquarium co-op caves. They're just the easiest to get. You're going to need leaf litter is definitely going to be a plus. You're going to need that a lot. And then you can use live plants I always use live plants. Use fake it's up to you. I always prefer live, it's just the easiest way to go. And then hiding places, you can use rocks, whatever, decor, whatever you'd like. I kind of keep mine simple. And then a breeder box, I always have one of them. If you want to get more fry, you're going to need a breeder box. And then your tank size. So when I'm breeding mine, I've seen people do it in 5 gallons. I've always preferred the 10, which has always been easier. You can use sponge filters. I always use hang on the back, but sponge filters are probably the way to go. And then, let's see where we can go. So, the triggering process, it's either going to be rainwater, if you can get that at RO. Sometimes, I've had some, like when I've done some of the wild ones, the hardness in the water was my biggest problem, so trying to get the hardness down was always going to be the issue. So when you're doing your water changes, I always do maybe 10%, and I always do cold water. I never use straight up cold. And that's normally what's going to trigger them, like the leaf litter, lowering the pH and all that. It definitely works kind of on the bottom, like the captive bred and the wild caught. Captive bred are definitely a lot easier. I have been able to breed them in about 7. You don't have to go too far because they've been growing up in our water, so it's a lot easier. Now when you go to the wild caught, it is a lot harder. I have had a pair from Peru that were a struggle. I had to fight with them to get that, and I've learned that the leaf litter is what's going to make them comfortable. If they're not comfortable, they will not breed at all. They won't do anything. So the point is trying to get them comfortable with the leaf litter, and then the slow walk, the reverse osmosis is what I use, and getting the hardness down is what actually got them to go. So, and with the wild caught, you're definitely going to want to try to keep the pH on the lower end. I've had mine about 6.4, somewhere in there is where you want to try to keep it at. But if your normal captive bred, you can do about 7, maybe a little less if you can get it there. So that is one of the pistos. I actually had them growing out and they bred under a rock. So that is, they will breed. You don't have to have a cave. They will breed. They will find a spot to breed. And that's what the eggs look like. If you've never seen them, it's like a pink. Hard to see them most of the time because they're in a cave and it's dark, but that's what they look like. So this is the breeding behavior. So when she's ready to breed, she's going to dance. She'll dance in front of a cave and try to get the male's attention to come in. This was one of mine that just happened today. And that is what they'll do. Everyone done. On the other side of that tank, there's actually another female, and they've both been trying to get his attention.
Because he's big.
Yeah. So that's what the female's gonna do. That's when you know she's trying to breed. You're ready, and you're gonna have some. So. All right, so the growing out process, this is kind of like how I do mine. You can, when they hatch in the tank, you got either 2 choices. You can leave them with the female, or you can pull them. If you leave them with the female, you're gonna get less. Some of them are just gonna, natural selection are gonna go. And then, if you move them to the breeder box, there's been times that I've got maybe 3 times the amount that I would normally get. So that's something I've learned over time, messing around with them. So, like the breeder box allows you to observe them, make sure they're eating healthy, because I've noticed they don't eat as healthy when they're with the mom, because they'll normally pick off some of the younger ones that aren't doing so well. But my trick is, if you're gonna pull them, wait till night. I use it because the aquarium co-ops, she's gonna bring them into that cave at night. All you have to do is take your finger in there, put your thumb over the hole, you can pull the whole cave, and then dump it right in the breeder box and just pull her out. put it right back in, and then she'll breed again. And it doesn't take long. Once you remove all the babies, she will breed in probably another week. So it's something I've learned over time. And if you say you don't want to use the aquarium co-ops or you use a different type of cave, or rocks or whatever, the turkey baster is your friend. That's the easiest way to get fry out of the tank. Using a net is a struggle, and you'll kill half of them trying to scoop them out, and it'll hit the glass. That's one thing I've learned. And then keeping them together, I've grown them out with 10 gallons. It's been the easiest for me. But if you go
fry with an airline too.
Yeah, you can do that method too. But I keep them in, when I'm growing them out, I'll keep them in a 10 gallon, and I'll just keep them all in there. I've learned that if you put them in a bigger tank, they will grow faster. But I normally just keep them in 10s in about 6 months. They're about that 1.5 inches, and they're ready to go. And I have I've had about 40 in the 10 gallon, and they were still breeding in the 10 gallon with 40 of them in there. So it doesn't really matter how many you have in there, they still will do it. And then this right here would be one of my females. This is one of the first times I did it. I left the babies in there to see how she would react with them. And that was her taking care of the fry. But Curtis pretty much covered a lot of the stuff that I was going to. So I was like, yeah. But feeding them, I definitely use a lot of frozen food, bloodworms, brine shrimp. I just alternate them, and that pretty much does the trick. So a lot of meaty foods is what they like. And that will definitely get them in that breeding stage. And I alternate it, so say in the morning, I always give them flake food. That's where they get the flakes at. And that's pretty much was it. You kind of.
At what age do you start mixing the live food with the frozen? Do you do it right away?
At first, when I first hatch, I'm gonna feed them brine shrimp right from the start. That's what I feed them. Mm-hmm. And then once they get maybe about maybe a quarter, they get enough there, I'm gonna start feeding them. I feed the Aquarium co-op. It's the fry powder.
Yeah.
I start giving them that first, and that does the trick. They tend to swell up, and then after they get a little bigger, I start introducing the frozen food. Other than that,
what's the ratio of females to males that you keep in your tank?
when I do mine, I only do pairs because the goal is to breed them. That's what I was trying to do. I have done a trio, but it wasn't mine. To me, it wasn't the best. I didn't get the best amount out of that. So for me, pairs have always been what I'm going to go for. And then, like, any other questions?
With the fry, do you usually get an even sex ratio with the babies?
It really depends. What I've noticed that playing around with the heat kind of changed. That the one I just had, the last batch, had a lot more females than males, but the other ones, I'm going to say it was probably about 80 when I did that one, and I got more males, and then this one was probably about 77 when I did it. So the heat's gonna, playing with the heat gonna get you whatever you're trying to go for.
Do you typically mess with one species at a time, or do you have 20 different kinds?
I actually had some other ones. I had sold Curtis my Mac Wisterii.
Yeah.
And then I had some, I'm gonna butcher this name, but it's like Apollo something, I just call them the black chins, their other one. Those were the ones I got from.
A whole lot, because man, it's deep, but there's 4 groups, is the best way to put it. I have a paper, where do I put my paper? Oh, there it is, over there. This is a good too for me, so on this one. So there's 4 groups. One is Diplotania, which is really cool, but don't get excited because you're not gonna find it apparently. Here's the male, there's a female. This variety is pretty much not in the hobby yet, but there's 4 groups. It's Diplotania is one, Pertensis is the other one. I don't even know if I have a Pertensis one. Yeah, I did. I mean, there's 2 in the Pertensis family or group,
it's Iridia and the Pertensis, and that's all that's in there. But apparently there's a lot more coming. This is one of the non-described groups. And then the two groups that we have in the hobby are, let's see, did I even name them? Yeah, Reagani is the one, and I didn't name the other one. You know the name of the other group? Remember what it's called?
I have no idea.
I can't remember what it is. Sorry, I should have. But there's another group. And that's the one that this Cacatoides is in. So there's the best way to colonize, to categorize the groups are, do they have a mohawk or are they kind of round and chunky? If they're round and chunky, they're in the Reagani. If they're kind of the mohawk, they're in this group right here. So you have the Cacatoides, which is what he was talking about. This is the triple reds. They've got all these different complexes within the group. And I'm not getting into that because I'm telling you what, that thing is, that's a rabbit hole that you'll never get out of. I mean, it's deep. If you want to get into it yourself. I'm not going that hole because it's crazy. So that's what he was talking about is Cacatoides, the triple reds, there's just, I think there's 40 different types is what I found on those. Let's see, is that the one that said that on there? No, that's the Agassizii. There's 40 different Agassizii in the hobby. So if you want to have, I mean, like, I don't know, the names are everywhere. They actually categorize them as like P127s and all. They've got all that category, but there's 40 of these. So these are just two males right here. They tend to reach 7.5 centimeters, and the females are 5.5. Like Tyler had said, your males get bigger than the females significantly.
They get about 3 inches.
Yeah, so most of your males grow more than the female. The females just kind of stop at 1.5 inches. For the most part, all of these fish stop females about an inch for the most part, for the females. So that's the males, and that's the females. Really pretty as well, but nowhere near as flashy as the male, especially in this one. So the wild populations on this are, I mean, they're almost everywhere. They're the second most widespread of all of them that we have. It's mostly, these are in northern Brazil though. They're in the north part of Brazil. So the next one we have in the same family or group is the Panduro, and the Panduro female to me is as pretty as the male. When she's colorful, her tail gets bright yellow or orange, and then she is yellow as a school bus. And then the male, okay, they're pretty, but come on, give her props. The Panduro, once again, their hardiness is all about the same. All the hardiness is relatively the same. The more closely you have to a wild fish, you're going to have to follow these. You know, the pH is 4 to 6.5, and their hardness is 0 to 90. When you look into them and you find like, oh, I'm getting a Panduro, just look into the hardiness level, and then I'll tell you how difficult they are. 0 to 90 tells me I don't have a huge window to play with. Now, as they get less wild, you get more to play with. So that's how I judge them, as how easy they are to, as a species as a whole. So the next is Trifasciata. Same kind of, males get to be about 5. These are a little bit smaller. They get about 5.5. This is one of the species that actually prefers what they call sluggish water. So, I mean, a puddle is what they prefer. They really don't even want water that's that's deeper than 4.5 inches deep. It's pretty crazy about that. And a lot of them, as we get, once again, the more wild you have, the more dim lighting they want, the more coverage they want. As they get less and less wild, like the one I have at my house, I have a hero's light on that thing. I mean, it is like the sun, and he's front and center, so he's less wild. Nasenji, another female again. These males to me kind of look a little bit like the African cichlids, a little bit with their lips, but the female is awesome. The female, this is once again between them and the Panduro. These are the prettiest females that we have. Then the next is Banshai, and this looks kind of like our rams a little bit with the super cool mohawk female. That's a pretty nice looking female because the other ones are kind of drab. They have a lot more black in them than a lot of other females. And then this is the smallest variety, and this is the Elizabethia. And they only get, they say the max a male gets is 5 centimeters. So, and then the female only gets 3. So it's a pretty teeny one. So, but they're really, I mean, look how pretty it's ridiculous. All right, so that's that one complex. Now this is the Reaganite complex, and that's one of the first ones that I had is the Borelli. Once again, really pretty females. This is the most widespread of all the Apistogrammas that we have in all of South America. It has the largest range. So once again, now you've got this hardiness is 0 to 270. So that's pretty damn big comparatively. So there was one in here, I think it was the Elizabethia. It's like 0 to 24. I'm talking about unforgetting. 18 to 54. I mean, that's 36 points. That's all you're playing with. So there's not a lot to play with on that. So, but this Borelli has a 0 to 270, and then the hardiness of the pH is 5 to 8. So pretty forgiving. I got mine to spawn lickety split by just doing pure rainwater. The whole thing of rainwater and a ton of leaves, and they just took off. Then there's the McMasteri. Oh no, sorry, I jumped on apparently the hung sloy. So this hung sloy and the McMasteri, and then there's another one called Vieja. They all pretty much look very similar. This one has a pretty broad nose, the males do, but that fish right there and the Vieja and the McMasteri almost look identical. So these fish are very similar, and then there's the one that I keep saying, the Vieja. It is actually not even in our hobby, hardly at all. They actually bred the red shoulder McMasteri to look exactly like it because apparently it's a lot more difficult to keep. And so they went ahead and just, used the McMasteri red shoulder to look like it. And that's what it used to be sold as Vieja. And then they realized that genetically that's not the right fish. So the hung sloy looks just like them. And they all have really, really cool spikes. I mean, the one I have is more red than this, and they're pretty tall. I mean, this one said that they get, males get 8 centimeters. Mine is definitely almost 3 inches long. He's a beast. So they do get longer than that. So let's see. So that's all of the species. One of the last things I wanted to say about this fish and a lot of wild fish are parasites. They are known to get them. If you stress them at all, it seems to flare up like pretty quickly. And as a whole, I use Pro on them. Do you have a specific that you like more than any other?
I've never really had any issues with that yet.
Because I feed live blackworms a lot.
Yeah, I don't.
That's where parasites, I'm trying to get away from them as much as possible because those blackworms, especially from stores around here, are loaded with leeches and parasites. So when you get them from the wild, though, they say you're supposed to, a good thing to do is Pro, and it's a good internal parasite to help get rid of them. So that's pretty much everything on these guys. If you listen to podcasts at all, a really good one is by Watercolors. They did an episode, it's episode 30, and it's Amazing Apistogrammas. It's really cool, and I listened to it like 3 times before I went and made these 6 pages of notes and stuff like that, because I listened to it probably a year ago when it came out. So Watercolors episode 30, it talks all about apistos in more detail than what we just did. So, all right, any questions? Good, because I don't know how to answer. Yeah, they're cool. They're really cool. There's there's people who just do this species, man. They mess with apistos. And there's so many more coming down the pike, it's ridiculous. So. All right, so now I guess we're going to get into the raffle. I think we're done with everything else, right? Very good. Like JT said, if someone has any, thank you. If anybody has any experience with web design or anything like that, or knows a buddy, or has a friend, hook us up. We haven't charged a penny yet, so any help we can get. And then on that table are some really cool fish. Make sure you look at all those bags, because there's who brought the coral? What is it?
It's a soft coral.
Just a soft coral? Okay, that's one thing that's not. Thank everybody for donating on that table.
you.